Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Brothers and Boss Battles, a video game showdown, a podcast where I, Anthony Frazaglia, and my twin brothers Pete and Tom discuss video games, new and old, but with a little twist. The show is structured as follows. For 3 episodes, we will discuss a game, an episode that fits within a certain category. We'll look into the game's story, controls, gameplay, effect on the gaming community, and more. On the 4th episode of each category, the 3 games will enter a showdown, or brodown, since we're all brothers here, and we'll argue about each game until we see which one comes out on top. And for the first category of this podcast, we will be going back to the classics with 3D platformers. And the first game of this first category takes us back to a classic character on a system from a classic company, and that game is Donkey Kong 64 on the Nintendo 64. It was developed by Rareware and released in North America for the N64 on November 22nd, 1999. Collect your way with the help of the Donkey Kong family to stop King K. Rool from destroying DK Isle. Guys, why don't we do a couple of initial thoughts here? Tom, you want to start us out on this one?
Yeah, sure. Um, so yeah, for a little historical brothers context here, we owned this game on Nintendo 64 back in the day, but we were late adopters of the N64 way of life. So we got this pretty late into the console's lifespan. And so we actually got the jungle green colored N64 that came bundled with this game, Donkey Kong 64. And it's a good thing that it did come bundled with it, or else I don't think that we would have gotten the chance to play this one. And, if that's any spoiler or foreshadowing there, yeah, my opinion on this game is pretty high. It's a fun game, and we're gonna get into it. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So excited to talk about that, especially in this first episode.
Pete, why don't you give us your initial thoughts?
Okay, yeah, I have actually a lot of initial thoughts. I'll try to save some for later, but Tom kind of touched on the first one. And yeah, his memory is aligned with my memory, where we really weren't interested in this game per se. And I think it was like probably Pokemon Stadium or something that was coming out at the time that we really wanted the N64 for. But we ended up getting it bundled and we played this game. And so I don't want to spoil my opinions right away, but I will say this. Before I replayed the game in preparation for the podcast, I considered this game probably my top 10, top 20 games of all time. And I actually had a kind of a big fear that it really wouldn't like grow over time well, and where like something that was I thought was awesome as a kid maybe would kind of fail to make me feel that it's the same sort of greatness of the game now. So stay tuned to see if my fears were realized.
So, unlike my brothers, I actually never played this back in the day. So, I played this for the first time for this podcast, and I liked it. I liked it a lot, actually, and we'll get into it more. But I don't have the nostalgia factor that my brothers have for this game, and I still very much liked it on the playthrough. This game isn't really available anywhere other than playing the cartridge on the N64. So we all passed it around and played on that, and with the old N64 controller. So we got the really true experience, me for the first time, and like my brother said, they for their replayed time. So that's it. Yeah, I think it'll be a good first episode. This is a good first game, a good classic game to talk about, and a good category with 3D adventure platformers. Um, I think we could just discuss a little bit about just the game, and like we'll do at the beginning of every episode, there are spoilers. I mean, we're talking about this game. It's over 20 years old now, and other games we'll be doing on this podcast will be newer. Um, but regardless, whether they're old or new, people may want to play them and not have them spoiled, so that's fine. We'll try to talk about some of the general stuff of the game, and then go into it. But there's not much of a story here. Essentially, the Kong's rivals, King K. Rool and his henchmen, come to DK Isle, where the Kongs live, and seek to destroy their home. So you have to stop them. To get started, I think one of the coolest things about this game is that you're not just Donkey Kong. You actually play this game as five different Kongs. So there's Donkey Kong, of course, and you start out with him, and you have to, at the very beginning of the game, in the first couple levels, save the other four Kongs. But you start off as Donkey Kong, but Diddy Kong's in it, Tiny Kong, Lanky Kong, and Chunky Kong. So you wind up playing as all of them, and they all have different abilities. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun switching between them and seeing what all of them could do. So that was a highlight of the game for me, to play not just as Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong, who had been introduced in some of the SNES games, but the other Kongs as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was definitely a big part of the fun factor for me too. Just the sheer amount of like different abilities they just packed into this game, spanning the 5 characters was it kept it fresh. And I think this was the first game to feature Tiny, Lanky, and Chunky, so that was a lot of new additions put in by the developers for this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, kind of, especially just thinking back to the time, 1999, I think it was released. We said, and just the type of game, like to have 5 playable characters that are really equally shared. I guess 20% each. I feel like that wasn't that common at
Yeah.
all at the time.
What did you guys think about how the switching mechanic worked switching between the different characters?
Like the barrel,
Like,
jumping into the barrel.
like having to go into the barrel and
I don't know. I didn't have a huge problem with it because it made it where you didn't have to. You had to do something to be able to switch. It wasn't just sort of switch on command.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I know.
There were some times where I kind of found that a little bit annoying where
Tedious.
yeah,
tedious, where it's like, okay, now I have to go back,
Yeah,
switch to this character, and then go
you're
back and
you're right. But there were parts that of the levels that were kind of exclusive to certain characters, based on
that's
the
true.
abilities they could do. Like in some parts, it would have cheapened being allowed just to switch to anybody on the fly.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's true. And there's some points where you have to like use one character to like, I guess, open up an area, and then like you could bring the other character in, right? So yeah, that's fair. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they could have used a few more of the tag barrels like scattered throughout the levels. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
other than that, yeah,
it's a
I
valid
see.
complaint, and I've heard, or I've read it online, that people were complaining about that, having to constantly like tag in and out, but having to go back to
yeah,
the tag barrel to do it.
that's part of the
Yeah.
gameplay in this game, though, because you could literally just switch like before every banana you were to collect, just without having to go back or do anything. And I think it would cheapen the fact that there was 5 of them. For those that don't know, one of the gameplay mechanics in this, is that it's very much a collectathon. So each character has different colored bananas that they can collect within each level, and those bananas allow you to fight bosses. Which, in beating the bosses, you get keys that unlock this big character that you need to unlock in order to progress in the game later on. There's also golden bananas in each level. I believe there's 25 in each level, I believe, and each of them can get 5. Each of them are specified to get 5. Like some person can't get 6 and another person 4. Like there's 5 available for each character in each level, and those are necessary to collect to progress to the different levels, where you then collect bananas to get to face those bosses that allow you to unlock the character to eventually beat the game. So those are the two main things you collect are the golden bananas and then the different colored bananas depending on the character you are. So, that's part of the gameplay mechanics. So you are going back and to each level and retreating to each level to as different characters to collect their collectibles in that particular level. So you are playing it a lot. Um, and that's why I think the five characters was kind of important because that changed it up enough to where you weren't so annoyed of having to go back to the same level because while you were traversing the same the terrain and same levels, you were doing it differently depending on which character you were.
Yeah, and some parts of the level, kind of like we just mentioned, were inaccessible until you maybe unlocked, like, one of the later characters or one of their abilities later on. So it kept it from feeling redundant.
Yeah.
Going back to the levels.
And the other thing I like about the level design is that none of the levels were that huge, I felt, and they were pretty self-contained and some were more annoying than others as far as the size and the complexity, but I felt for the most part it wasn't too difficult to find your way around with any of the characters.
Yeah, and they had the teleport pads, the numbered teleport pads that kind of let you get around easily, even like in the main like world map where you're in like the DK aisle, like just to get to the different levels, you can navigate pretty quickly that way.
Yeah, those teleport pads were great. I found myself using them a lot.
Yeah, that was a really smart addition.
Yeah, but it's funny that or not funny, but interesting that you mention the size of the levels and you feel like they weren't that big. I kind of disagree. So actually, one thing we didn't mention, Tom, with the Jungle Green bundle, it actually was also bundled with that expansion pack. I feel like,
Yeah,
I feel like that's an obvious discussion point anytime we're talking about Donkey Kong 64. So
Why don't you
that,
get into it?
yeah, that basically doubled the memory capabilities, the RAM of the hardware of the N64. So Donkey Kong was actually a big part of the marketing campaign was that it's like such this massive, huge game, and it's so big we had to, create this expansion pack and include it with the game. So that was kind of part of the whole marketing strategy. Um,
doubled the memory to a whopping 8
yeah,
megabytes.
yeah. There's actually stuff online. It's like basically, I don't know, misinformation, I would call it, where people claim that the expansion pack was included because there was some like game breaking bug that wasn't covered really late in development and they couldn't fix it. So that was like the workaround. But I think it's basically proven to be not true, but a lot of people still believe it. Kind of how that all started was like, I think actually one of the people who worked on Conker's Bad Fur Day was in an interview or something, sort of made a comment then, but he didn't work on Donkey Kong 64, even though they were developed by Rare. So basically, a comment he made basically made everyone believe about this bug, but
Oh man.
that wasn't true. Another thing I had read, and I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but like it was almost like the upper management said, we're going to do this, we're going to include this expansion pack. So, they told the development team, do things in this game that will justify this expansion pack. But so anyway, nevertheless, like it's a big game and, we can get into other stuff. I think like really the main benefit of that expansion pack, I think, is with more graphical.
Yeah.
And it may be some sound too.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily because the levels are,
Yeah.
slightly bigger than maybe what I'm leading on or leading people to believe. But I mean, the levels are all different. Like the first couple levels, Jungle Japes and Angry Aztec are two relatively self-contained levels. Then you start getting to some of the other levels, like I believe it was Frantic Factory where those
Yeah.
teleport pads really came in handy because there were in a lot of places you could see where you had to go, but you couldn't get there directly. So using those teleport pads was important. Was that the level?
Yeah, I think that's the level you're talking about. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's an example of I think of an impressive level. It was big and there was things moving all the time.
Yeah. Right. Right. I also think, but like you said, I think, probably the graphics are pretty good. I would say they were pretty good for the time. Um, fairly smooth, smoother than other 3D platformers of the time, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the graphics were good. I don't to me they weren't like amazing, especially if you consider this expansion pack. Like I
Yeah.
thought they were very good for the time, but nothing amazing. There was only a couple of games that require the expansion pack. Um
Yeah, I don't remember to be honest.
yeah, this obviously Donkey Kong 64 was the first, and then Majora's Mask,
Hmm.
and Perfect Dark. I think those are the only three that required it. But a lot of the games that were, or some of the games developed after Donkey Kong used the expansion pack to sort of enhance the visuals a little bit, but it wasn't required.
You mentioned, as far as the memory, you mentioned some of the sounds. So there really isn't voice acting in this. It's all the text bubbles. There's a little bit at the end, where King K. Rool is sort of going "thank you" to all his fans cheering him on in the last battle, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But there's really no other voice acting that I'm aware of, or that I remember. But Tom,
I was just say when Donkey Kong, when you get the golden banana, he goes, yeah.
yeah, there's that too. The most impressive part of the sound in this game, I think, is the intro song, the DK rap, which really is
Absolutely.
good. Take a listen to it, even if you don't play this game and haven't played this game, just YouTube it. I'm sure it's up there somewhere. But
Yeah,
I don't,
then it's very iconic. I mean,
yeah,
I think it was included in
Yeah.
Smash Brothers games. It was included in
Yeah.
the
I
Mario
wanted to bring
Brothers
that up.
movie. Yeah.
They in Super Smash Bros. Melee, they butchered it. Like they didn't copy it exactly how it was in the
uh,
N64 game. And they kind of like, I guess, modernized it a little bit and brought it into the DK level in Super Smash Bros. Melee, and
mm.
it's awful. So make sure you don't listen to that one. Make sure you listen to the original N64 version.
Yeah, so
Yeah, you're right. Now I totally forgot about that, but now that you say it, I remember that.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think I remember you, even though I didn't play this game back in the day, I remember you guys playing it because I remember this song very well. So I guess I
Yeah,
guess I
definitely.
heard you
I'm
guys
sure
playing it.
I'm sure we sang it a lot too
Yeah.
as kids.
Speaking of
So
that, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, what about the other music in the game?
Uh,
Anyone have any strong
Yeah,
opinions?
I feel like Donkey Kong games are known for, or at least like the Donkey Kong Country games were known for having like really great soundtracks. And I know we're not talking about those now, but I mean, honestly, this game didn't really impress me much with the soundtrack. Like, I mean, just the music in general. Um, the sound effects were good. I mean, like, all the monkey sounds and
yeah, I liked
uh,
I liked the like when you go to Funky Kong. Yeah, I kind of liked the background music that played while you were in his shop because it sounded like almost like a fife and drum kind of military
yeah,
Yeah,
like March or something, but like a little bit more upbeat. And it went with the theme of him selling you, your guns and stuff like that. So I like that was a pretty cool little jingle that they had in there. I always found that one catchy.
yeah, that's interesting. That's true. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I also wasn't impressed. There was some I really liked, some levels,
yeah.
some not
The
so
Jungle
much.
Japes one had
Yeah,
like the
that's the best.
classic
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Donkey Kong like
Yeah.
sound,
I also
which was
really like
familiar.
speaking of sound though, one of the abilities you get for each of the Kongs is their ability to play a musical instrument on various pads that, either open up certain portions of levels or give you other benefits or can kill enemies. So each Kong has a different instrument that could play, and some of those are pretty cool. Like I really like, Lanky Kong was sort of like supposed to be a little doofy, and he had like a trombone jingle that was pretty
yeah.
it was
That was my favorite jingle.
yeah, it was pretty
Yeah.
funny, and I really like Diddy Kong's like jamming out on the electric guitar, which was his. They
I
all
also
were,
like
The
I also like the music when Diddy Kong went on his jetpack.
yeah.
yeah, it was like a
I
rock
don't
and
really
roll
want to
kind of.
say positive things about Diddy on his jetpack, but we could talk a little bit more about that later. Um, but yeah, for the Chunky Kong played a triangle, which is pretty funny because he's like this big brute of a character, even bigger than Donkey Kong, and he's playing this little triangle. Donkey Kong had the bongos, and Tiny
The
played
bongo,
a saxophone. What'd you say?
yeah, the bongo beat was good too.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Yeah, so that's kind of what I thought about the sound. I mean, it's definitely good, and I'm sure the expansion pack may have contributed to some of that.
One thing on the DK rap, I was reading an interview with the composer, and that was actually meant to be a joke. Like he wrote it as a joke, but then everyone kind of loved it,
Yeah,
and so they included it.
it fits so perfectly, I feel. Like I rarely like linger on the intro scene of especially of a game like this where there's not like some epic story or you really don't have to get much background details. And I would listen to the song through like almost every time I turned the game on.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it was really good.
So how did you guys feel about going back to the five different characters? And it's just like you mentioned it's kind of a collectathon. There's a lot of things to collect, but really you multiply that by five because there's five characters. And so, right, for the listeners who maybe didn't play the game, a lot of times you might be navigating as one character and you're seeing these collectibles that another character has to collect. And they're kind of like dull, grayed out. So you can't collect them because you're not their appropriate character. But how did you guys feel about that? Was it like overwhelming? Because I got excited when I was like, oh, I have to go over there as Diddy, and then oh, I have to go over there as Chunky. Like, but
Yeah, no, I liked it because it sort of made you strategize. You had to know where the tag barrels were, and then pick a particular character and go in one place and then the other. Um, so that portion of it didn't bother me. There is a portion of the collectathon nature that did bother me, but I'll let Tom answer your question directly first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely makes you keep a mental log of where you want to go, and who you want to go there with, which character. Yeah, so it makes you think. I mean, that's cool. I have nothing, I have nothing against thinking. Um, yeah, I mean, just kind of like I said before, it would have been nice if there was a little, maybe a few more of the tag barrels, and then just like some of them, like when you go into the room to feed, the colored bananas to the what is it, the hippo, I guess, right? To get to
Yeah,
the boss.
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, so like I don't know, I found myself using that tag barrel a lot,
Hmm.
but then you have to go in to that room,
That's true.
play like that little like fade away animation, and then switch, and then go leave the room. So it just got, yeah, I mean, it got a little tedious, but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like I'm not using that as like a big
It's a minor
complaint,
complaint.
or yeah. Like
That's interesting.
that shouldn't deter anyone from playing the game though.
I don't think I used those barrels once, other
Uh,
than when I was feeding the hippos. Like just in the navigation of the levels, I don't think I went in there to use it once.
oh no, I'm a Tom. I use those a lot in the navigation of the levels, just because they were very, very transparent where they were. So you knew if you went in the hippo and
Yeah,
pig
exactly.
area that you'd have a tag barrel. So it was just an easy way to do it. And they were in a few locations in each level. So
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So, kind
yeah,
of
go
on this
ahead.
topic, how did you feel about, or maybe you didn't think about it, a lack of a map?
I feel like
I
that
know.
would usually bother me, but it didn't here for the most part. I felt like and like getting lost just trying to find where you're going would really, really bother me. And I don't know if I just got lucky or was paying particular attention in this game or something, but that rarely happened to me. Like I was able to know how to get to each level. They kind of give a cutscene in between each key that you use to open up the that cage of that big character, and I'm forgetting his
Hey,
name,
Lumsy.
K Lumsy. Um, like he would jump around, and then like it would knock a boulder over in a particular part of the DK aisle, or something else would happen where they'd play a cutscene, and then you'd kind of know where to go. So I don't know. I never really had that much trouble with it.
yeah.
Did
It's the same here. I didn't ever really. It didn't occur to me to like think, oh man, I wish I had a map here. Are you thinking the map would show like, here's a guitar pad for Diddy or like a Diddy barrel, or is it just like
No,
the
I don't know. I
outline
don't
of the
think so.
area?
That would pretty much be like a player's guide. Like, that would almost be cheating, I feel.
Well, I mean, I feel like modern games do that now. Like, I mean, games that are much bigger than Donkey Kong
Yeah,
64,
yeah.
but yeah,
That's because new games are easy.
that's true.
They hold your hand. But yeah, I also never really felt like, oh, I needed a map. And even when you were maybe trying to find a particular thing with a particular character, and maybe you got lost a little, it almost led to discovery of something else, that you had to do with another character. Like, I didn't feel like there was a lot of just wasted time navigating the map, even though there was a lot of map navigation,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah,
because of the 5 characters.
I mostly agree. I mean, I guess yeah, the one counter to that would be like the times where you knew where you had to go with, but you weren't that character, so you had to go to the tag barrel and then go back to that location. But
Yeah.
again, minor point there.
So, talk about a negative in my view. We mentioned the collectathon nature of it. So with regard to the gameplay, in order to get to the final battle with King K. Rool, you obviously have to get enough golden golden bananas to unlock the last door blockage. And I forget the amount, but that wasn't overly bad. And obviously, you also have had to unlock K. Lumsey by beating all of the regular bosses throughout the game. So you had to collect the bananas in order to be able to unlock those doors. So I mean that's whether you think that's a lot or acceptable, you knew what you had to do. You knew you had to get completely unlock K. Lumsey, so you needed to beat each boss to get the keys, and you obviously knew you needed the whatever amount of bananas to get into each individual level. However, you needed to get two other things that really was not transparent at all. And that was a rare coin, rare meaning the company coin, and then what was it, a DK coin?
Nintendo coin.
A Nintendo coin. So in order to do that, there's two. You have to basically play two old arcade games. One of them is in that factory level. You can play a few levels of the old Donkey Kong game where you're Mario and you have to save Princess Peach up on the platform. Then Donkey Kong has taken her, and it's not that easy. You eventually you keep trying and you beat it, but it's not that easy. You need to do that. I think you have to beat 4 levels in order to get
Right, for
the Nintendo coin. And if you don't do that, if you don't realize you have to do that, you'll wind up all the way to where you're going to face King K. Rool and realize you don't have that coin to put in. And then at that point, you have to go back to Frantic Factory, and that's sort of a confusing level, and find where the
yeah.
arcade console is and then actually beat it. So I found
Not only
that.
beat it once.
What's that?
I said not only beat it once,
Oh,
because you beat it the first time, you get the golden banana. You have to
oh,
beat it
right. Yes, you
an
have to beat it
additional time.
twice. So that's also confusing. So like that whole thing I didn't like because it was not obvious at all. And so that was
I
problem.
forget. Did they tell you at all that that's how you get the Nintendo coin, or are you really just like completely in the dark?
My only
I don't.
guess would be is that I guess it's Cranky's wife.
Oh,
She's
Wrinkly Kong.
Wrinkly Kong. She's passed. She's deceased in this game, but you can go to different doors with her on it, and her ghost comes out and gives you advice. I don't know. I did not trigger one that told me I needed to beat that for the Nintendo coin twice, but I guess it's possible. I don't know if you guys
Gotcha. Yeah,
looked it up.
I didn't really use
Yeah,
yeah,
those
me
doors after
neither.
the first level. Yeah.
I didn't find them helpful.
right. So the reason I
But so
knew to do that was because of you guys. So you guys had figured it out back in the day and knew about that and had sort of mentioned it in passing, I think. And so I luckily didn't do that, but I just feel that's annoying for other people. And the second one is you get in one of Cranky Kong's labs later in the game, and you have to beat you have to get a certain score in the old rare game Jetpack. So that I actually didn't know that's what you needed to do to get the rare coin, but I actually just Cranky sort of alludes to it, so I beat it, and that one's really not nearly as hard as the Donkey Kong levels to me. So I wound up sort of getting that just by chance, again, not knowing I needed it, but just playing it. I
Yeah.
actually kind of like that game anyway. So
Yeah.
it's so I did that. So those two things were a complaint for me though.
I agree with you what you're saying there. I think it's like really cool that they included these in the game, and I think that they should have just been golden bananas, like for people who wanted to, really like 100% or 101% the game. That you have these extra challenges to do, and or for people who just wanted to play these old arcade games, which is fine. But yeah, to make it a requirement to beat these arcade games, to like face the final boss, I didn't like that because I mean that's not what people are playing
Yeah.
this game for. If they wanted to play the original Donkey Kong, they would just play that. Yeah, and
Yeah,
even the jetpack game seemed kind of bugged to me. Like I at one point I was on the second level and I exceeded the score that you needed to, and the coin was just not dropping. Like you have to like actually move your character in the game to
Yeah.
pick up the coin, and it just wasn't there. So I ended up having to actually do that twice, which was annoying.
Yeah.
that's funny. I think I just stayed on the first level. I kind of cheesed the game.
Yeah.
That's what I did the second time around
Yeah.
because I was like, maybe if you go to the second level, it doesn't spawn.
Yeah. It's interesting that you ask about if the game gives any indication about how to get the coins.
Mhm.
I'm not sure actually, but I guess from playing, back in the day, I remember. But also, kind of like what you guys are saying, the jetpack was a lot easier. So that I just, right, was prompted by Cranky. I played it and eventually I beat it. So, and then you get that coin. So it's almost like kind of like, okay, there's these two coins. I got the rare coin from Jetpack. To get the Nintendo coins, probably going to be the other old arcade game, right? But you have to have beaten Jetpack in order to kind of
Yeah.
Yeah.
follow that
I think
logic.
actually when you beat Donkey Kong Arcade the first time, doesn't like the bird come and squawk and like say like, oh, you could play it again. It's
Yeah,
harder
I
and
think
there's
you're
an
right.
additional reward or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah, but
now
you have to
it's
play
coming back
it.
to me.
Like
You have
you
to
have
beat
to
it the
beat
first
it to
time. Yeah,
begin with, which is
Yeah,
tough.
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Like
So actually, there was a handful of things that I skipped because you don't need to complete right 100% of the things in this game.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that Donkey Kong arcade was actually one of the things that I had skipped. So I kind of shared in and your frustration when I discovered or rediscovered, like, oh man, I actually need that to complete the game.
Yeah. I did the same thing. Like I came across it when I was in Frantic Factory and I recognized it as, the arcade game from when we had played years ago when we first got the game. So I was like, oh yeah, no way I'm doing that. Like,
So
for a golden banana.
you remembered it being difficult? I was
I
surprised why you just
guess,
like were like, oh, I'm not doing it.
just because I mean those old games are all
Yeah,
so difficult. I
yeah. So
just I felt like it was gonna be time consuming compared to like many of the other golden bananas, and I wasn't planning on doing a perfect like 100% run on this one. So
yeah,
I was just like,
101%.
so,
yeah,
so
my
speaking
bad.
of, I beat this game with 56% completed, with 112 golden bananas. I believe there's 200 in the whole game.
201, yeah.
201. And that took me 32 hours, but there were times of this game where I just kind of left it on. So I think that maybe contributed to that time because I don't think it should take that long, especially at 56% complete.
Yeah,
But I kind of liked that it allowed you to beat the game, and it was still a hefty game, at 56% complete, but it allowed you to beat it with that, get the complete story, see yourselves as the victors against King K. Rool, with still a lot of collecting, but contributed to the replay value with if you wanted to 100% this, and this was before trophies or achievements or anything like that, but it did list your percentage complete, so that sort of was like a source of pride to be able to complete it. And I believe you guys have an interesting story about that as far as when you played back in the day.
Yeah, so we did 101% it. I mean, after replaying it and some of these like mini games, I don't know how we did that, but
I don't know either. We'll have to get
yeah,
into
yeah,
some of the specific mini
yeah.
games, but
So I think Tom, I think we probably shared the file, the save
yeah.
file,
We
and I
did
think
for sure.
we also used like a mini walkthrough. I think like not the full player's guide, but I think it was at the end of like Game Pro magazine or Nintendo Power or whatever we had.
Yeah, probably a Game Pro.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a full walkthrough, but we
You
had
probably
that
need
aid.
it.
Yeah.
Some of them are probably pretty obscure to get.
Yeah. So yeah, so we obviously dusted off the N64 to replay the game for the podcast, and that save file is still intact at 101%. So that was like exciting to see. I actually didn't remember. I remember getting very close. I didn't remember if we actually did it, actually.
No, I was the
we
last
gotta,
one to see it, and I saw 101%.
Yeah.
we gotta post the pic on social media so people know that we're not blowing smoke.
To legitimize ourselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the I guess it goes to part of the gameplay, but some of the mini games and just other ways you had to get the golden bananas. So for those that don't know, like we mentioned that you have to get golden bananas. There's 5 per character per level, and you could get them in a variety of ways. Some of them are very simple. It's just like finding it. It might be slightly hidden and you find it somewhere. A lot of other ones, however, you have to do particular mini games or use your character's special ability to get them, whether that's Tiny shrinking down or Donkey Kong going in his, little barrel mini game.
We
So
know which special ability you're actually talking about right now.
yeah, or Diddy Kong's rocket
Yeah.
pack to reach golden bananas that were out of the reach of everyone else. But I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Like some of your, either favorite ones or ones that seemed impossible.
Well, I kept a list of golden bananas that I actively skipped because it was too difficult for me.
Mm.
Um,
Why don't you tell us?
yeah, so one of them was in Crystal Caves. I don't know if you remember, but as Diddy, you open a door after playing guitar, and then there's basically a center platform. It's like a rectangle and it's raised, and then there's a platform in each of the 4 corners.
Yeah.
And it's like a time thing, and you have to defeat all the baddies on each of those platforms.
Oh yeah, that
And
was no chance. I did not beat that one.
yeah, that one I tried and tried, and I was like, this is not worth it.
Yeah, that was a Diddy specific one. And
Yeah.
that's why I think it was so important to like not require 100% or even like 95% to beat this. Another Diddy one that comes to mind, you guys might not have the same problem, but uh you had to sort of light candles with Diddy Kong by flying with his jetpack. And I think there was 4 of them in a room that you had to do within a timed however many seconds. And like it was just too difficult for me at least.
Yeah,
Uh,
I remember that one. I completed that one.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, same.
Later on in the game, I think you have to do something like that anyway. Like you're required to do it for maybe not a golden banana, but to like pass to get to King K. Rool. But yeah, that one I skipped.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know you. I know you didn't like the Diddy Kong ones.
Yeah.
one that I skipped was when you're racing. Who was it? I guess you're tiny. Yeah, yeah, you're tiny and you're racing the whatever it was, armored
Like a beetle, I think.
beetle. Yeah, yeah. It was one of those things where it was like there was some like trick that you or like some best way to do it, or basically way that you have to do it in order to beat it, and I just like wasn't able
Yeah,
to really figure it out
that
after a
one was
couple of
really
tries.
that one was really hard. I went on YouTube to watch somebody beat it, just so then I kind of followed their path. Because like there's parts where you could go left or right, and then just to see the strategy if you're like when are you supposed to stay behind or when you're supposed to be in front of them. And even then, I mean, I just got so lucky because at the end there, when you're not sliding anymore and it's like a foot race, I was basically in front of him and he was kind of pushing me to the finish line. But if we were in different lanes, he would have
Yeah.
passed me. Yeah,
Yeah.
that one was tough.
Yeah, I don't,
See, I would have assumed that if he ran into you, you would have like gotten hit and lost your coins. It's like I wouldn't have ever even thought to do that.
yeah, I
I,
don't think
I
yeah.
didn't do that on purpose. That's where I happened to
Yeah,
be.
yeah, yeah.
I don't think I beat one racing one or one of them where you're like in the cart, like the mining cart, and you have to collect like 50 coins and win the race. I don't think I did one of those. And there's a lot with Lanky Kong because he could do that handstand sort of like fast walk thing. Um, But yeah, none of the golden bananas that I obtained were through any of those.
The carts they were challenging. I didn't find them to be that bad. I never felt that they were impossible. And all the ones that I encountered that I initiated, I completed.
Yeah, they were kind of fun anyway, like the
Yeah.
cart ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too.
S-
But the one of the mini games I have to mention that was just god awful is the Beaver Bother, when you have to where you're like the crocodile and you have to scare all the beavers into the center of the barrel.
Yeah, but also to me impossible to
Yeah,
defeat one of
I
those.
don't know I don't know how we did that.
Yeah, like
I
so there was like maybe 10 you have to get into the hole. I think one time I got one.
Oh wow. Well, yeah. So we should mention most of these mini games they occur multiple times and they
Yeah.
just kind of get harder, more difficult each time. So I think once or maybe twice, the easiest one or two I beat. But then there are two instances in the same level in Creepy Castle. You have to do it as Chunky and as Lanky. So
Yeah.
I don't know which one was harder, but I couldn't do either.
Yeah, I didn't successfully do either of those. And then there was the other one where you have to shoot the watermelon when the light comes on,
Yeah.
and it's
No,
just
no,
like you have to have the reaction time of like a
yeah,
cat, maybe. I don't know.
you have to shoot the golden banana. You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you have to shoot the watermelon at a golden banana, right?
yeah, so I looked up how to beat that. I cheesed. Basically, you have to like pause the game as soon as the lights turn on.
That's so lame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you really I did beat that one, but with that strategy where it's
Oh,
just
okay.
like you pause it. Yeah, that would have been funny. It's like I can't do Diddy, I can't fly with Diddy Kong at all or beat any of the races, but I had fast enough reflexes
Yeah.
to win that one. That one was fun though, all the other times, because all the other times were like actually possible.
Yeah.
But so those are actually fun ones to play. The other sort of they're not really a mini game, and this sort of goes back to my point about the coins. You also needed to beat a certain amount of those where you're sort of just like in a battle. I think they were represented by the King K Rool pads, and then you go to like almost like a circular battle area where you're facing it's basically 60 seconds or a set amount of time of enemies just bombarding you, and you have to not get hit off the platform or you otherwise die, and you get like a crown jewel to be able, and then you need at least like 3 or 4 of those to progress to the last level too. So that's another one that I didn't realize you needed until the very end, and had to go back to levels, find those pads, and then beat them, and then go to the King K rule level. So I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty annoying.
I didn't know that you needed those to progress to the final boss either, but I happened to have them, thankfully.
Yeah, you just played
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I
Just
had the same
like
experience.
when I encountered them in the levels, I played them and beat them. I didn't think most of them were too tough.
So we heard Anthony's kind of gameplay stats. We didn't share ours.
Yeah, I have
Was-
mine. So for,
Yeah, what was your
yeah, for
percentage?
this one, I got 58%, 119 golden bananas, and my playtime was 19 hours, 36 minutes.
Okay, yeah, much
So
less time than that.
yeah, having over 30 hours to get 52% is
Yeah,
that's questionable.
yeah. So I was really into this game. I mentioned it's one of my favorite games. So I collected 153 bananas. That's 75%,
Hmm.
and that took me just under 36 hours.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and there might have been some of the leaving on the game is
Yeah.
kind of like you mentioned too, but
Right.
Yeah, I would have liked to be able to do more, but just had to move on to other stuff. But yeah, I mean, there were many times where I was like I knew that I didn't need to get, bananas to
yeah,
progress further, but I was just, yeah, let me do it anyway.
yeah, it's 1000% a positive that they don't require you. They allow you to skip a lot of stuff, but
Yeah.
I almost wonder if it's too much. You basically just need 100 bananas out of
Yeah.
golden bananas, so half. Like, should they have bumped that up a little bit? Maybe. I feel like they
Probably.
should have. Yeah.
Probably
Yeah,
a little
probably.
bit more. But
I don't know. It's okay because like the people who just want to like get through the game, they have that option. And then for the people who like really want to get the most out of it, they can easily do that too. So
yeah. So
I'm okay with where it was.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the controls. So the basic sort of fighting, quote unquote, you basically just press, what was it, B? You're either punch or tiny swing her hair or whatever. If you were running and then pressed it, you would do like either a cartwheel or roll. But the fighting the regular bosses to the level, not bosses, the regular like enemies in the level, that really wasn't a thing. Like sometimes they were there and would you know screw you up where you were going, but none of those baddies were really that difficult. They were just sort of more in the way. There were a few that couldn't be killed just by like punching them or jumping on them or whatever. So those were a little bit more annoying. Like some required
Yeah.
you to throw those like fruit bombs at them, I guess they sort of were, and that they would blow up. So that
Oh
was,
yeah. But the ones that hold the blueprints, you have to use like your charge B move.
oh right. Otherwise it takes a while to beat them up. So that they that so anyway, so those fighting controls weren't bad or whatever. I mean, I have to point out some of them were pretty smooth. Like I really like Tiny's glide with her hair and just some of the other general ones. But the it was a 3D platformer from the late 90s, early 2000s. So it had some of the same issues as far as the camera trying to spin the camera around and getting caught on a wall and things like that. Um, and then it just had when they tried to go extra, it was a little difficult, like Diddy Kong's jetpack, which we've alluded to. I found it very hard to fly. Like there were times where you have to it was hard to go forward. You'd go up when you wanted to go forward, or you'd go forward when you wanted to go up, and then switching the camera angle while also maneuvering sort of put me at least going in positions I didn't want to go in. So that was one of my least favorite parts of the game, and it's necessary. Like in the King K. Rool battle at the end when you're Diddy Kong, you have to use that. So that was took some practice.
Yeah. Yeah, the jetpack was tough to control, and especially with the points where you have to like shoot
Yeah,
while you're flying. It's like,
yeah, that was
yeah,
tough.
good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I felt like I got the hang of it towards the end of the game, like in the payroll fight that you mentioned. Like I didn't find that I struggled too much on that particular part.
Yeah, I feel the
Um,
same way. I got
yeah,
the hang of it. Well, as much as you could get the hang of it, I still wasn't an expert flyer, but
yeah, yeah. And just relating to the controls in general. I just found myself like mashing that R button to like constantly focus the camera behind the character. Like I was like playing the whole game, just like constantly tapping that button, and
yeah.
that made it a lot easier to move around, in my opinion. So
yeah,
I mean,
no,
it's
that was,
annoying that you have to do that, but
and even that wasn't perfect. It didn't like perfectly center it a lot of
yeah, yeah,
times, but agreed. I use that a lot.
There were a couple of, but I have to commend them as far as, because compared to other 3D platformers that, we might discuss, um, I feel like while the controls weren't perfect, the platforms that you had to walk on were a little bit bigger than in other levels, so you didn't need the precision that you needed in other games, I meant to say. So you didn't need the precision that you needed in other games with these awful controllers and a not great camera angle. So, that they definitely that made it seem like the controls weren't that bad, and so they should be commended for that. And then again, like I said, there was a lot of cool other things that were pretty smooth, like with Tiny Kong and Lanky Kong, and even climbing up trees and stuff. There's what was sometimes not perfect, especially when the camera didn't line up directly behind you, was the swinging on the vines. There were times where I was on a very high platform, let's say like just around DK Isle, and you have to go on vines, and you might miss, and then you fall. So that was a little annoying, but again, I'll have to commend them. When you fell, you lost a quarter of your health, which is like what you would lose when an enemy hits you or something like that. Whereas in, other games you die completely. So I I I have to commend them with that because, there's technical limits with controls, from back then, but if you don't make it so arduous and such a high penalty for when the controllers aren't helping you out, I can live with it a little bit more.
I agree. The controls and the camera, of course, aren't perfect, but for the time, I did not have a big complaint about them. One thing I did have difficulty with that was jumping from platform to platform. I remember in particular there was one when you were tiny. I forget kind of the situation, what level it is, but like you have to, I think you have to turn small to access this location, this area, and then you have to like jump on maybe three platforms, you know, and it's like sort of like lava or acid or something, and then you hit a button, and then you have to retrace your steps on those three platforms, and then you have to go on three platforms to the other side of the room.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, and then like you would
You
fall,
have
but
to
then
you have to
you,
use the
yeah,
twirly
yeah,
hair
yeah,
thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Always at the last one, I would always like misjudge it and fall into the lava.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in
Oh,
that
yeah.
situation, if you fell, then like you would continually take damage every couple of seconds, and it was hard to jump out of it onto the
Yeah.
platform again. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that was the situation that really stands out. But just in general, I thought jumping on the platforms was kind of like you would almost like slide a little when you landed. I felt, and you would slide off. I don't know, but I had troubles with that. But I just want to go back to one thing and you mentioned about the a minor thing. You mentioned about the enemies and how they're kind of just there in the way.
Yeah.
Did you? I like that actually. Like to me, they well, one they did get a little more difficult as the game progressed, but like I did not want to have to like deal with enemies that were gonna hit you and almost kill you, or they would be impossible
Yeah.
to kill.
That
Like
wasn't really the point of the game.
yeah,
Like,
I thought that was a positive.
Uh,
yeah, I agree.
yeah. And I think it was. And then they kind of still had that action fighting element portion of it with the battles. Ding 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 ding. um
We'll get
so
a sound for that eventually.
yeah. Why don't we talk about those? Excluding the final battle for now, but the boss battles, ding ding ding, where you face where you
The
have to
bosses.
the bosses.
Where you battle the
Yeah.
bosses.
No, but yeah, in those we were talking about where you have to get the bananas to face them to get the keys.
So yeah, I could start. So the first few were like very dead simple. Like was I guess the first two, right? Or uh
I think it's the first two. You fight the
the first two.
armadillo
And
or
then yeah,
whatever.
The Diddy fight is basically like the same thing.
Yeah, it's like the flying, I don't know,
Yeah.
dinosaur or whatever.
Yeah. So I mean those were like super easy. Like and I was it's actually kind of disappointing because I was like, oh, is every fight gonna be lame like this? But then you find out that it's not, so that's cool. Um yeah, so there's one that I really wanted to mention. It's one of the later ones. It's the King cutout.
No, that one's
So this is the
tough.
one where
Oh yeah, I like
yeah,
that one.
right.
Yeah.
We have to basically shoot yourself out of a barrel into like this cutout of King K. Rool that like his henchmen are holding up and stuff. Um, but so like what really annoyed me about this one is like there are points where you need to like visually view the cutout because like one's a fake or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And the camera just like doesn't let you see that far. Like
Yeah. You have
it
to
just doesn't
kind of
let you.
guess.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
No,
But so yeah,
I thought
I
there was a
found that
little.
one like very frustrating.
I thought there was a trick to kind of angle the camera in such a way that you could see. I thought.
That battle got tough because like towards the end you really had to time it and then you had to time it by because it would almost light up each quadrant before it would shoot. And like you'd have to count out the amount of the amount of lights you saw before there was a pattern. Um
Yeah, that was the last hit, right? It
but like
was
yeah.
yeah, there was a bit of a like a timing element to it, which is fine. That's I didn't have a problem with that. It was more like the one before it where there's like a fake that if you shoot yourself at it, then you lose a Kong.
Yeah, right. So what was cool about that battle is you use all five Kongs and you basically have to beat it by the time you would have used your last Kong. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Uh,
I like that one a lot.
the one that I remember was much earlier in the game. I think it was the first one after those two easy ones when you're Lanky Kong and you're in the boat. And what was tough about that is that like after you, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but if after you hit the boss, you had to then sort of rush through the various DK symbols that were showing up. And they just kept getting smaller and smaller, and it gave you less and less time each round after you hit the character. So that one wound up being pretty tough to me.
Yeah, that one took me a few tries to get because yeah, at the end the controls aren't great on that
Yeah.
boat. It's a little hard to control. So like when they get really small and you only have a couple of seconds to get to it, it could get tough.
Yeah, they were very like slippery controls, I feel. So if you like
Yeah.
at the end, like when the time was, you really had to almost be perfect, where if you overshot it, to turn around and go back and get it was just going to be too tough, not enough time.
Yeah, I can see that one being frustrated. I didn't. I think it only took me a couple of tries,
Yeah.
so I didn't mind that one at all. Then there was the tiny one against Mad Jack, where you had to jump on all the different platforms, and then
Oh, that was tough too.
yeah, that was tough. That was probably the one that took me the most tries actually.
Yeah, that was tough
But that was fun. It was fun though.
because you had to land on the same, because then there was a way to hit him, but it had to be of the same colored platform that he was on, because I think there was black and white, and you had,
Yeah, blue and white. I
oh,
think
blue
maybe.
and white, yeah. So you had to yeah, so that was a tough battle.
Yeah, that was probably the toughest. But again, it was tough in a good way. Like I had fun with it. So I thought the boss battles were hit and miss.
Yeah, they weren't like super fun, but it was they also weren't like frustrating. Like, yeah, I like that. I mean, so some of them were fun, but yeah, for the most part they were just I don't know, a little tedious.
So
Hey,
eventually,
do you
what?
want to get into the final boss battle now, or you want to save that to the end?
Let's save that to the end.
All right.
So if you guys have anything else you want to sort of bring up before then, now might be a good time to do it. Maybe we talk.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I did want to mention the whole like the stop and swap
Hmm.
feature.
Okay,
And
good. Yeah.
yeah, that's really a discussion for like Banjo Kazooie. If we ever review that game in the long, long future. But
It's
but there's obviously some relation. Because Banjo Kazooie was kind of the first game, so that's kind of really where the discussion would mostly make sense. But since Donkey Kong 64 is meant to be the second game, and with that feature, there's some interesting things about it. So without getting into too much detail, again, that would happen in a potential Banjo episode. But basically, this feature was meant to be a way to transfer data from the save file of one game to another. So there's some interesting things as it relates to Donkey Kong 64. So some features were already in development before the stop and swap got nixed. So there's like some things that are still in the game. So through some like glitches or I don't know, some manipulation of the game, you could actually access a cutscene in the treehouse that eventually like pans to an empty space in the corner of the treehouse and it's like stays there for a couple of seconds. Now, in a pre-release promo, there's a locker with an image of Banjo Kazooie in that space in that corner of the treehouse. So presumably, like something was going to happen, like Donkey Kong would enter that locker. So anyway, so then after that cutscene, the player is then transported to the Crystal Caves level. So, that's very interesting, right? So, but it gets better. Now, you guys may or may not remember now this is the actual game without manipulating or getting glitches or whatever. There's in the Crystal Caves, there's one part where it's basically a sheet of ice that you have to do the primate punch with Chunky to break it to access what's behind it. And then behind that wall, there's really just like some yellow bananas, a yellow balloon, and then there's this Gorilla Gun pad, which is Chunky's ability to turn invisible. And so once that pad is activated, then like a golden banana just basically appears. And it takes you a couple of seconds and you walk to the banana and you get it. Like there's no obstacles or anything. So it's kind of out of place, right? It seems fishy that something that easy would occur, at that stage of the game, right? Crystal Caves wasn't one of the first couple of levels. So that's interesting, right? Now it gets even better. If in the German player's guide, it includes in additional chambers. When you're looking at the map of Crystal Caves, it includes like this additional room, this additional chamber in that part of the game. And it's widely assumed that that chamber would only be accessible if you had the ice key from Banjo-Kazooie. And again, that ice key is part of the Banjo-Kazooie discussion. But basically, you did something in Banjo, like 100% it, you would get this ice key, and then the Donkey Kong 64 game would read that data, and now you would have the ice key in Donkey Kong.
But just explain like how the stop and swap is supposed to work.
Basically,
just switching out, yeah.
Yeah, so if you did something, let's just say 100% Banjo-Kazooie, you would turn off the game, take out the Banjo-Kazooie cartridge, and put in the Donkey Kong 64 cartridge. And just the way electrical components work, the data is stored for some amount of time. So if you did that quick enough, the Donkey Kong 64 would be able to read some of the remaining data from the Banjo-Kazooie game that you just took out. Then that would basically make you access the bonus content, the ice key or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm surprised they never like it seems like a Nintendo or a Rare dev would have been able to like confirm that, that those suspicions that you were saying about like, that chunky banana was just randomly easy. Like,
Yeah.
Because it's not like I don't know, there's no like controversy or anything. It was just like a scrapped feature. So like why can't they just say, yeah, this is what we were gonna do, but because the feature never made it to the light of day, it didn't happen. Like I feel like this could be explained. Like, why has no gaming journalist ever reached out to someone for clarity on it?
Everything like about this, even like we were talking about the expansion pack earlier, it just for some reason nothing is clear cut. Like this is what it was, and but anyway, so there was also some data miners looking through the DK code, and they found like when you pause the game, there's like the totals pages, and you could kind of cycle through them, and you could see how many how many bananas you have in this level, or how many whatever you have. Yeah. So there was also a page that was meant to be dedicated to the ice key, and it would show 1 out of 1 if you had it, and that would unlock once you got it. That page would unlock. Yeah. So and then there was one other part that was related also, and you could also see this through the German player's guide. But in Creepy Castle, if you guys remember, you enter. It's almost like it seems like a museum, I guess. And you enter as Chunky, and then you could see behind this like pane of glass, stuff for Tiny, like a purple balloon or whatever, and you could access that through the monkey portals, right? So, and then you eventually get there, and I think there's just like a purple balloon that she shoots, but there's also like it's like a podium that you would see in a museum, like in a museum in a movie maybe, and it houses some valuable artifact or something, but there's nothing on it. But then in the German player's guide, there's like an image of a golden bust of Donkey Kong in that location. So I haven't really seen a good theory as to what that is, or may have been meant for. But anyway, so I found those very interesting. So those are the only two differences between the German player's guide and like the North American one and all the other ones.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's
that's cool when you're able to like get into like the data mining and like people who actually go through like the source code and find like all the stuff that was included in the game but never actually like exposed through the gameplay. Those are always fun things to see.
Yeah, so not completely related. There's actually one other thing that I just wanted to briefly mention. Remember like the dirt piles where you get the rainbow coins?
I didn't know that.
Actually, I didn't know that either. I had forgotten. But like if you hold B or something on the dirt pile, then
it does like a charge up attack.
Yeah, and then you get the rainbow coin, and what it gives you 5
coins for each.
5 coins it is for each.
Kong. I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, in 2017, so this was like 18 years after the release of the game, I guess. In Fungi Forest, somebody discovered another dirt pile that was like it's hidden under the tall grass. There's like a lot of tall grass in that level. And so like things like that I find awesome. I mean, after 18 years of the game being released, somebody discovered something new.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah. I
didn't
think he
even
was
know
like
about
doing
that.
he was doing like a speed run, I think, or something. And
Huh.
yeah, so those are some cool things about a cool game.
All
Yeah,
right. So
so
wait, yeah, go ahead.
no, there's a few little things I wanted to mention that we haven't mentioned yet. Maybe clean up some things, but one thing we didn't mention was the fairies, and you have to take the picture of the fairies.
Hmm.
So that's actually how you get the 201st golden banana, is if you snap pictures of, I think it's 20, all 20 golden fairies. But actually, so as you take pictures of more and more of them, that's how you unlock some, bonus features in the game. So, as you get some, you could unlock things like the boss battles. So like just in the main menu, you could fight the different bosses that you've encountered. If for some reason you want to replay those, like, you know.
They were
Um
so fun.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was
Uh,
sort of just like another part of the collectathon, but they were running out of good ideas, kind of a
yeah.
thing.
But one thing I want to mention is you could unlock these two mini games. So one of them is as Ramby the Rhino, who you use throughout the
Hmm.
game, and the other one was the swordfish, I think he is.
Yeah.
So that one I never really loved. Basically, you're just obviously
Well,
in water.
it involves swimming, so of course not.
Yeah, you're in the water and you have to swim through those DK stars, those red and yellow DK stars.
Yeah.
And, you're in a certain allotted time and then you just get your high score. But the Rhino one, I remember as a kid just like playing for hours and loving it and trying to beat my high score. And so, in that one, it's timed also. And you just have to ram these beavers and then randomly or one in every so many beavers is a golden beaver that counts as three. And if you hit the beavers like within a short amount of time, I guess within a second of each other, I think it doubles the points or something. You get a bonus, and it's like so simple, but I really love that. And Tom, I'm sure you remember me playing that a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, I remember we played the heck out of that when we were younger. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, it's such a simple concept, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, back then, like, achieving a high score and then beating it was like an accomplishment. So, yeah, it was
Um,
fun.
Yeah, and so you could unlock other things like I think the DK rap, so you could listen to that whenever you want, even though it played when you started up the game anyway.
yeah. That's cool.
But then you got to restart the game every time if you want to keep listening to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen to it on a loop. The
Another thing we didn't mention
oh,
is breathing
I
underwater.
was gonna say, so you mentioned the swordfish thing, so that
Yeah,
I should have mentioned this in the when we talked about the controls, but you could not drown underwater. So kudos to this game for doing that.
Yeah, I mean it's awesome, and it just allows you to explore more and do more things underwater. Right? They were
yeah,
right as a game. They were able to put more complicated things underwater because you didn't have to worry about losing your breath.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like
yeah, I
that
like
very
that.
much.
so simple
Yeah,
yet so genius.
the swimming controls I felt were bad, like very hard to,
Yeah,
to
they were.
use. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like there were some of the mini games where you have to like swim underwater and collect the coins.
Yeah,
Like
I
you're in
think
a big barrel and you had to swim and to
yeah.
collect all the coins in the barrel. Like
Oh, those are
they were just
tough,
hard.
but
They
those
were
were
harder than they
doable.
needed to
But
be, but they were definitely doable. Yeah, yeah. Like I beat all the ones that I attempted.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's just funny. I was like swimming. Something that should be just so simple. Just like movement is so difficult in these games. But yeah, I mean, that was something I wanted to mention too. Like when we were just brought up the swimming, that at least you can't drown.
Tom, you had wanted to this when we were on break. You mentioned the hideout helm, which is the last level before you face King K. Rool. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so this was a really cool level in my opinion. So it's a little bit of context. This is a timed level, so you have to complete it within a time limit, and that time limit is based upon how many blueprints you've collected throughout the game and given to Snide, the fox who was helping you uncover the secrets of King K rules. But yeah, so anyway, I mean, the cool part about this level was that or one of the cool parts was that it required that you use all of the Kongs, and I think pretty much like well, not all, but like a lot of their unique abilities had to be used to get through it. And it was just cool to like, I don't know, I felt like very epic. I mean, I think the music in this particular
Yes,
level was stepped up too.
it
Like,
was. It was. The music was
yeah,
good in this part.
yeah, like it really made you feel like a sense of urgency. But then also just like, you're switching to Chunky and he's like knocking down all the gates and stuff, and
Yeah.
like it
Yeah,
was
it really
cool.
was like a I don't know, like a 90s sort of like action adventure movie where everyone had their part to play and they were
Yeah, yeah, like the
they were
Avengers or something.
yeah, oh yeah. Well, more recent comparison, but
Yeah,
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 no, it was really cool. And I mean, one of my least favorite parts about that was that there was a major sort of jetpack Diddy Kong portion of that fairly early on. So it's like, the first couple of times I played it, I think I spent 15 of like the 25 minutes I had secured through the blueprints, like just trying to figure out Diddy Kong's portion, and that obviously, didn't work out well. So I had to, start over or whatever. But overall, it was a really cool part. It was nice to have them all have to work together. So I
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
enjoyed it.
I found that really cool. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree. It was awesome. Everything about it was awesome. The timing aspect was awesome, but also the fact that, what you did, how well you played the game up until that point, added more time to it. And
yeah,
like you said, using all the Kongs was awesome too. The,
yeah.
the
I
the
don't,
hardest one
I
for me was actually as Lanky, and you have to shoot the three zingers, the bees. That was the hardest thing for me for some reason.
Oh yeah, you had mentioned that, but I had kind of found out a hack of that. Like you have to, if you go on, there's like platforms in that level. So if you shoot from there instead of the floor, it was a lot easier. I think I beat it in two shots after two tries after climbing up one of those platforms.
And
Whereas,
you stayed on the same platform for all
yeah,
three.
because
Yeah.
the bees or stingers, whatever they are, hover pretty close to that, so it's a lot easier to shoot them. But yeah, that was a tough portion.
I don't remember how much time I had, like the total, but I do recall that I only had around 5 minutes left when I completed the level. So yeah, if it puts pressure on you too, which is
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, and each of them, so essentially what you had to do is beat two particular mini games in for each character after you found out where to go.
Yeah, but you also had to
Find out where to
figure
go.
out where to go and do different things like with the jetpack and yeah.
Yeah, and then Chunky's big punch and the jetpack and to sort of unlock. Yeah, so that was really cool. And that was sort of a way to disable King K. Rool's machine that was going to blow up DK Isle. And then eventually you kind of face him to take him down. And I think we'll get to that last aspect of the game, which is the big battle against King K. Rool. But first, let's go to our first mid-episode filler. And for this mid-episode filler, we're asking the listeners and each other, what would you rather have? What ability from Donkey Kong 64 would you rather have? We've selected three just to narrow it down a little bit, but you can give us any one you want to talk about, whether it be a musical instrument or any other ability that any of these Kongs have. Let us know what your favorite is. But if you can stick with the three, that'd be great. What would you rather have out of Diddy's Rocket Barrel Boost, which is essentially flying, Chunky's Gorilla Gun, which is essentially invisibility, or Tiny's Monkey Port, which is essentially teleportation? We'll give you our responses and the community's responses during the early portion of our next episode, episode 2. All right, now back to the episode. Let's wrap it up with a discussion of the final boss battle. Ding ding ding. Against King K. Rool.
Yeah, we got a
Uh,
lot of those today.
yeah, I know. Wow, I actually said it a lot. It wasn't intentional, people, we promise, but it just worked out that way. But either of you guys want to start off with the King K. Rool battle?
I'll start. I had kind of forgotten what this battle was. When I replayed it, I had forgotten from 20 years ago, and I thought it was awesome. Again, you're using all five Kongs,
Right.
and some of their different abilities, and I don't know. The same feeling. I
He's getting choked up.
He's getting emotional about this.
the same the same I have the feeling I have about this final boss battle is kind of the same feeling I have about the entire game. It's like my child. No, it's like I just think it's awesome, and I can't really put it into words. Like it's hard to explain why it's awesome. It's just awesome. I don't know. Maybe you guys have an easier time articulating how you feel.
Yeah, well, I'll articulate sort of what you actually see on the screen, which is it takes place in a boxing ring, and or a wrestling ring, however you want to characterize it. But it's each Kong takes their shot at King K. Rool, so they each have to beat him in a particular way each round. And I think overall you have an outside limit of how many rounds you can take to beat him. So if you don't die or lose in your particular round, you go to the next round sort of at a clean slate and have to beat him with that particular Kong. And I forget exactly how many you have, but you can't go past that limit. That's not usually the problem. Like the problem I face is that you would, you know, you die or beat him in the round. So each Kong, there's a different thing you have to do, and then eventually, if you beat him with all five Kongs, um, then you win and you save DK Isles from King K. Rool. We should probably talk. The first you start off as Donkey Kong versus King K. Rool, and that's probably the only easy one. Essentially, what you have to do is avoid him for a little bit, and then you get the DK barrels that you could propel yourself into him, and he's sort of like blocking and punching, and you have to sort of just time it in a way where you hit him in the face. I think you have to do that 3 times, and then if you do, you win that round. You guys remember?
Yeah, I mean that one they try to put a little like twist in at the end where he like
Right.
fake cheers, so that it's like a fake opening. But yeah, I mean that one was pretty straightforward. I don't think anyone had any issues with that one.
Yeah. And who was next? Diddy was second.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that one?
Yeah, so this is the one where you have to use the jetpack to fly up to the lights above the ring. Then you have to shoot them down, right?
Yeah. But you
There's
have
targets on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's 2 targets on each portion of the lights of the ring, and then if you shoot them down, they fall onto King K. Rool's head, and he's like running around, um, you know, injured, and you have to do that 4 times. But I will say, it's very difficult to shoot and fly. I mean, it's very difficult to fly on its own. So to shoot and fly was also very difficult. And I found
It
that you had
was,
to sort
but
of shoot it on the way up, like when you were flying, because if you looked like you were directly in line with the target, I was, having a tough time hitting it.
I didn't have any strategy going up, going down, but again, I feel like by this point in the game, I was pretty okay with navigating on the barrel, and especially the hardest part of I mean, not the barrel, the jetpack. The hardest part about the jetpack was going forward. So flying
Yeah.
through the stars, whatever.
yeah.
But in here, you didn't really like. Of course, you had to go forward to move, but the real crux was kind of just staying in place and shooting. So I didn't find it as difficult as a lot of the other jetpack uh, activities in the game.
Yeah. Did you utilize the hover mechanic on the jetpack at all?
Oh no.
I mean, that helps
Eh,
me. I mean, that's basically you hold Z and you just kind of like
Uh,
hover there in place. So it makes the shooting part a lot easier.
yeah, I didn't do that. Yeah,
I
that
didn't do that either.
sounds like
Yeah.
it would help. But I will say it wasn't one of the more difficult. It wasn't one of the most difficult Diddy Kong jetpack portions,
Yeah.
which was good.
As far as like the round for the actual boss fight, sorry, boss battle. Um, this one, like I didn't find myself losing at like dying at this point in line. It just took a little bit of time to like actually line up the shots, but I didn't feel really threatened or like at any risk of dying at this point.
So then once you knock the final light onto his head for the third round, it remains on King K. Rool's head and your Lanky Kong. And I found this one pretty difficult. Essentially, you had to use Lanky's really long arms to punch a target outside of the ring, which brought up a barrel. Um, and this is like Lanky never used this long of a stretch throughout the game, so that was interesting. But anyway, you bring up the battle, you throw it into the ring, and it breaks apart, and there's this giant banana peel. And because King K. Rool can't see, essentially what you have to do is then in each corner of the ring, there's the trombone pad for him to play his trombone. So what you essentially have to do is lure King K. Rool uh, in a path that would make him run over the banana peel so that he'll fall and injure himself. And so you have to do that 4 times. But that got increasingly difficult because he's moving around pretty fast. And for you to get in a position, you had to angle it properly so that King K. Rool would be at an angle that he would go over the um the banana peel, and the pads would disappear once you use them. So at the last one, it became pretty difficult to get him to run over the peel. You guys have any
Yeah,
thoughts on?
yeah, no, I thought this was the most difficult phase of the boss battle. Yeah, and yeah, so you had to strategically throw the barrel, in a certain location to make the banana appear in a certain location. And then, like you mentioned, he was moving around the ring, so you had to play the trombone just at the right time where he was kind of in line with the banana and you.
Yeah,
So
right. So and
yeah,
I
I thought
found
this
that
was
pretty
difficult.
difficult. And then at the end of that, you get to Tiny Kong, and what you essentially have to do there is use her shrink ability, but after dodging various rounds of like shockwaves that King K. Rool puts out, and then by shrinking down, you get to go into like a crack in his shoe, and you have to use your feather shooting ability to shoot his toes a certain amount of times. But the toes are also sort of like jabbing at you and stuff, so you have to avoid them. So hers was fairly difficult too. I don't feel as bad as Lanky's, but was
This one,
fairly
yeah,
challenging.
this one, I struggled with this one the most, actually, out of all of them. I felt like it was the toes came at you really quick, and you could, if you didn't know exactly where they were coming from, like which ones were gonna come at you, you could end up being in a position where it was like impossible to dodge, like if you're all the way on one side, or and then
Yeah,
the,
yeah. I mean,
the
you had like 3 watermelons worth of health by that point, so it was like a little bit possible. But at first, I kept dying because I didn't realize what I had to do, and I didn't realize that like the toes were shaking before those particular toes would jab at you. So like, there is sort of like a lot of these old games a pattern, um,
yeah.
So and
And,
yeah,
I kept like trying. Because I think at that point you have the feather gun like automatically equipped, but like I kept trying to like you have to like hold most Z and then C, the up C button to like
hmm
bring out your gun.
yeah,
So like I kept like doing that even though like you didn't need to, and I just kept like messing myself up with that.
yeah,
So that added to it,
right. So
which
that
was
Yeah,
more user
I feel
error
like
than
this.
actual difficulty. But
Yeah, I feel like this one was pretty much impossible to beat on the first try, but once you realize what you had to do, and then once you learned the pattern, which wasn't that difficult to learn
yeah,
after a couple of times, then it was quite easy.
yeah. So like, what's interesting, you used each Kong before we get to Chunky as the last one. Um, you used each Kong, and like as long as you beat it within that, I believe their health reset. You had full health once each Kong came in. So that was sort of like a good feature, but you did have to beat everything in one shot. So like if you died as at Lanky Kong, you had to start back at Donkey Kong. So like you did have to, beat each one each time. In one playthrough. So that was, that made it challenging, but the health restore sort of helped with that. All right, then finally Chunky Kong, and this wasn't difficult, but took me a little bit to figure out. So what you had to do here was use your what's the Mega Punch called? Uh,
primate punch or
Primate
something.
Punch. when you're in the corner to like time it as King K. Rool is sort of walking towards you, and then each time you hit him, it starts to get a little bit more difficult. Like one time he's zigzagging towards you, and you had to punch him right at the right moment. But with that particular punch, I was like continuously trying to hit him with just like a regular punch my first couple of tries, and it was like not hitting him at all, and he would uppercut you. Um, so that took a while, but eventually you get it.
Yeah, that was a little disappointing. It was the last one, and it wasn't that difficult for me.
Yeah. I kind
I
of was
felt.
surprised they didn't make Donkey Kong be the sort of the final one that beat him, and obviously not with as easy of a method as you're using initially with Donkey Kong, but I was a little surprised at that.
I guess
Because
it
I
was
really
the
felt like
order.
yeah.
I guess it was the order of the characters, right?
Yeah.
Donkey Kong, then Diddy, and then Chunky's last.
I really felt that like they didn't like promote Donkey Kong in this. Like it really was like a team effort. They didn't make him necessarily stand out. In fact, he was sort of like probably the most boring character as far as ability wise and stuff.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
agreed.
cool.
Yeah, they gave the other ones time to shine, which is cool. Yeah, but that's it. That's the game, people. So I hope you liked it. Want to give some final thoughts and recommendations?
Sure.
All right, why don't you
Yeah,
guys start?
I'll go first. Yeah, I 100% recommend this game. Yeah, it doesn't feel very like, so I just replayed it very recently for in preparation for this. It doesn't feel very outdated. Um, there's a ton to do. It's very addicting. It'll make you, well, at least it made me want to like, collect, collect a thon. But and maybe that's just a personal preference if you're into like collecting things, which I happen to be. So yeah, it definitely stood out for me. But yeah, definitely recommend. It's a fun game. Very very gameplay that keeps it fresh. Yeah,
All right, I'll
it's a good
go.
game.
I 100% also recommend the play. I mean, Donkey Kong is an iconic game. So, unfortunately, it's really hard to find. I think it was on the Wii U Virtual Console, but that was shut down in
Yeah.
2023.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, the only way to, I mean, if you do want to do emulator, that's an ethical decision for the individual. But really, the only way to play it is on the N64.
Yeah.
But if you could somehow get your hands on that, 100% recommend. It's interesting. I think this was the 7th best-selling N64 game, and I don't know why. Just being a gamer, it doesn't feel like it was that popular. I don't know. I don't know a lot of people who played it or liked it, and you don't really hear a lot of much about it. But a lot of people must have played it. So, but if you're one who hadn't played it, or even just if you want to go back and play it again, I would highly recommend it. And kind of echoing Tom's point, it doesn't feel outdated. It really stood the test of time, in my opinion. And again, just finally, like I said a little while ago, it's hard for me to articulate all the things that make it great, but I just really love the game.
Yeah, and I'll finish up. Unlike my brothers, as I mentioned, I just played this with a podcast. So I don't have the nostalgia factor that they do, and I still would definitely recommend this game if you can get your hands on it. It's a lot of fun. It's got tough elements, but it's fair. It's there's a lot to collect, but it doesn't become overly burdensome, especially because you can still collect a lot, over 100 bananas and beat the game. And then, so at that point, you've still collected a lot. You still have gotten to feel the excitement and joy of beating a game. And then if you still want to at that point, could still go on and collect more and spend more hours with it. The characters are cool. They're all very unique. So I think that adds to it. Being able to use 5 characters is fun. And introducing like expanding this Donkey Kong world. So, like Pete said, it's hard to get your hands on, but if you can, I would definitely recommend it. All right. Thanks everyone. We really appreciate you tuning in for the whole episode, our first episode of Brothers and Boss Battles. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with the second episode of our 3D platformer category. And until then, thank you and have a good one. Take care. Bye. And follow us on X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS Boss Battles. And visit our website at brothersandbossbattles.com.